In 2017, I was standing at a table at a local health fair for a large company here in the Valley, and a beautiful, kind woman walked up to the table and began engaging with me and encouraged someone that she knew to sign up for a complimentary call to find out more about my services. And little did I know that that beautiful, kind woman was the chief human resources officer. He ended up becoming a client. And later she checked it out for herself. And you're about to hear about that in just a moment. Having this conversation with Diana was just such a reminder today for me that don't put your life off until someday. Do the work to create more joy, more peace, whatever it is that you desire right here where you are. Because when someday comes, if it comes, it will then be the bonus on an already intentional, beautiful life you've made right where you are. I'm so excited for you to meet Diana Bresnan. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently, a podcast where we explore the ins and outs of what becomes possible when we're willing to think, do, and show up differently to the moments of our everyday lives. Hi, Diana. Welcome to Differently.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited and honored, honestly, that you're here. I don't know if you know this, but you really were somebody that came into my life and my business pretty early on. I mean, I had been in business for quite a few years, but my business was all online at that time. Well, it always has been online, but I didn't really have a local business of any kind. And because I had got my certification through a company in Canada, and we coached people through them, and most of my clients were on the East Coast. And so that's how my business started. And you were really one of the first people locally that I met that really opened a door for my business here. And I have just forever deep gratitude for that. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Just kind of getting to know your processes and seeing how many different people that I know that you've been able to touch in a positive way. So that's been really fun for me too.
I love that. So when we were talking about you coming on the podcast, we were, really talking about you just coming on and really just sharing your story, and that your story will have relevance for people, and that your journey and some of the things you went through, I know are going to touch people that are listening. And so let's start there. If you want to share a little bit about kind of who you are and where you are today, and then we'll, just dive into your story.
Okay. I might kind of start at the beginning because I think that makes sense.
Yeah, start at the beginning.
I met you at a health fair that we organized when I was working at Early Warning Services. And I was just walking through the health fair participating, and there you were talking to folks about what you do in terms of, life coaching and mindset shifting and things. And I had talked to one of my team members and said, you should really test this out. And we kind of sort of joked a little bit about it, but I thought, someone should test this. So he did, and he came back with such positive feedback. And I thought, okay, so if we're going to really recommend this, I should probably check it out myself. I don't need it. Like I don't need life coaching. I'm good. But I thought I should at least check it out. So I scheduled an intro call with you, and I'll never forget. I was really honest up front and said, so I want to do this, but I don't really need the coaching. So I don't want you to feel like I'm wasting your time. And you were like, oh, no problem. You were so sweet and so welcoming. And so we did this 30 or 40 minute intro call to just chat about things. And at the end of the call, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember saying, I said the word responsibility 40 times in 40 minutes. I think I need you. So I think my entire mind shifted based upon that phone call, and you didn't even have to tell me I needed it. It just surfaced through our conversation. So I think even people who have done lots of coaching and participated in that for years and are seasoned leaders and feel like they have their whole life together can find such a big lift by opening opening up to this. So it was huge for me. So that's kind of how we started. Do you remember that?
I totally remember that because I remember you came on and you were just like, oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need this. And then there was just a moment of like, like just it was a blind spot, like something you hadn't seen. And sometimes we can't see, even if we have gone through a lot of this work, myself included. We go through a lot of this work and we do a lot of training and have a lot of awareness in our life, but there are things that we just can't see. And that conversation opened up something for you. And that really was a big theme in our work together was responsibility.
It was. And I think if you're self-reflective, and you kind of helped bring this out through some of the exercises that you did with me, you really push yourself to think about, where does this come from, right? And part of it comes from, I believe, my parents and the values that they instilled in me. And, my dad was huge on responsibility. And that's a great thing. But I think any strength when overused turns in, to a challenge, right? And my mom's, her big value was generosity. So if you pair responsibility and generosity, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like destined for, pushing myself pretty hard, right? Excuse me. So I think it was helpful to at least acknowledge that. So through the discussions that you and I had, it was really helpful for me. I had a big job, head of HR for a really innovative, growing company. And, it wasn't like you were just on maintenance mode, right? You were constantly innovating and growing and doing new things. So you're pushing yourself, and being a single mom for lots of years and, having high expectations of myself, and then coming into a new relationship and blending a family and all of these things getting together. And I remember talking to you and feeling slightly guilty because early morning was actually paying for this engagement, right? For me to test this out and get some coaching. And I'm thinking, Carla, I need you to help me quit my job. And I remember talking to you about that. And you were awesome because you said, if you quit your job, that is not going to solve the things that are going on in your head and how you think and how you behave. And so, yes, you may quit your job and think that solves it, but you're going to run into those same challenges over and over again, no matter where you're at in your life. So you need to address those first. And it was such good coaching. And I didn't believe you when you told me. I really didn't. I thought, there's no way I can do all this. There's no way. But you helped me see that those responsibilities are really self-driven. You can lever your thinking and lever what you think you must do versus what you think is really most important for you to do. And I remember you telling me, every day when you get up, think about the end of the day. And at the end of the day, can you say you did the things that were most important? Will they make a difference? Will they make you feel fulfilled at the end of the day? And that I still use that today, to think about, what do I really want to do? What do I need to do? And what's going to make my life feel fulfilled? So that's really carried with me for a long time.
I remember what I remember when you started was that you were so committed to what you were up to at early morning, and you were torn by, these other poles of, I think, your mom and your new relationship and your family. And I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but I remember you thinking that I just have to get to retirement, and then I'll take care of my life, and then I'll have these quality relationships, and then I'm really going to live. And I just saw you putting your life off until the future, and I just wasn't okay with that. Do you remember that?
I do. And that was it's such good guidance, but I think we all do it. We have these milestones where we think, if I could just get through this, if I could just do this. But I do think the reality is that we can have more than we think, right? Without sacrificing the things that are most important to us. So, I still think about it today in terms of priorities, like what should I do and what could I do? And be deliberate about your decisions. And and I think it's just been helpful. And, I did retire, right? But it wasn't for a couple of years after you and I, chatted. It might've been 3 years after we chatted, right? So, and I enjoyed that part of my life. The last couple of years that I was working, I did enjoy it. It was still a lot of work and it was still a lot of pressure. But I did have greater happiness, greater fulfillment, felt like instead of feeling like I'm doing everything halfway, I felt like I was really doing what I needed to do really well and feeling good about it and maybe saying no to some things. So I retired, and everyone I know everyone who knows me, who worked with me, my friends, my family, everyone kept asking me, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do when you retire? And I was almost slightly offended by it, thinking, well, I have tons of hobbies. Like, don't you know this about me? Of course I'm going to fill my days with all the fun things that I've been looking forward to doing and having more time for. And when I retired, I turned it off like a light switch. And I didn't think about work. I didn't miss it. And for the first year, I went back and looked. I read 35 books my first year, and I loved it. And I could sit on my lanai for hours at a time just watching the ocean and feeling like I don't have to do anything and I'm going to feel good about it. And it was awesome.
I love that. I want to go back to this idea of like putting our life off, because I think it's something that you see all the time, and I've done in my own life. And, when the kids are older, when the kids leave, or when I make more money, or when I lose weight, or when I on and on and on, it's this really hopeful illusion that you're going to have the life that you want out there in the future. And I think if you don't know how to create fulfillment in your life right where you are, that it's unlikely that you'll know how to do it at that future moment. And so if you can learn to create it and cultivate it right where you are, then when you get to that future destination, then it's just a bonus. It's just like retirement. Because we will carry those patterns forward with us if we don't figure out how to work with them right now. So I would love to share some of the things, because I remember there was like an inner conflict, because I think in your mind you saw like, if I were to change anything in the way I'm doing, that I'm going to like drop the ball, or I'm not going to leave the legacy I'm committed to leaving at work. And together we kind of worked with, how can you leave the legacy that you want to leave and start to create more balance and peace in your life now? Like, that's actually going to make you a better leader, instead of, what you thought was that it was going to, diminish what you were doing at work. So share a little bit about that.
Sure. And it's so true. You're used to running so hard and so fast and expecting so much of yourself. And to even think about dialing it back a little bit feels bad, right? Because you feel like you should be doing more. But the reality is you could work a month straight with no time off, and you would still not get everything done, right? There's always more to do. And so I just think kind of wrapping your head around, how do I determine what my priorities are? What do I need to accomplish, and how do I manage that in my day-to-day life? And realizing that the personal side of things is just as important as everything else that you do, right? Putting yourself first sometimes is huge. And it was important to me to go home for dinner several nights a week and really have a quality evening, and not feel like I was thinking about work. And one of the things that you taught me, I remember you coming into, we did a group workshop. And the first thing you told everyone was, okay, get a piece of paper out and write down what's on your mind right now. Just write it down. Write down what you're thinking. Write down, things that you're thinking about that you need to do, whatever that is. And then after we did that, you said, okay, now you can be present, because you've taken all of that you're thinking about right now, that you have to do, that's weighing on you. and your brain's not shutting off, and you've put it somewhere, that it will be there at the end of this workshop. So for the next hour, guess what? You get to let that go and be present. And I still try to do that today, right? If I'm having trouble sleeping because I'm thinking about something that's going on, or if I'm going to bed with something on my mind, I'll take a moment and just write it down. And then it helps me relax the brain and be present and know that tomorrow it's going to be there. So that was one of those strategies that I think I still use today. And it's been really, really helpful. And I started to learn that, so I want to be on a school board, and that's important to me. But guess what? I no longer feel like I have to chair the committee. I don't have to, I don't have to volunteer the moment something comes up. I can lever things and still feel like I'm getting what I want, and by helping, students and the educators, but I don't have to let it overwhelm me. And that's a hard thing to learn, is to dial that volunteerism back, and, all the things that you want to do and know that you could do, but it might not be the best choice.
Yeah, well, I think what I hear you saying is kind of like stopping that default reaction in our life of, especially if you have the responsibility and generosity genes, from the past, that, that was how you did life for a long time. And so those are going to still kick in. But the beautiful thing is that you can sit back and go, recognize that, and then really choose for your life now, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And I think that you actually are able to probably serve in a greater way when you do that, when you make an intentional choice that fits.
I think so. And, it doesn't come without setbacks. I was retired for a year, and the timing couldn't have been better. Right before COVID hit, it was like 6 days before the world shut down, and I had just retired. So I felt slightly guilty about that as well. Like, I just got out of this, and someone else is going to have to really manage all of this. But a year after I retired, my former CEO reached out and asked me if I would get involved in a consulting opportunity. And I thought, I committed to myself that for a year I wouldn't think about a thing. I would just enjoy. I would not do anything. And it was like a year and 6 days of my retirement that he called. So I ended up engaging in some consulting, and it's been fun and interesting. But I also volunteered to be on the board of my HOA, and then was elected president. So all of a sudden, I'm feeling a little bit more like, wait a second, this is kind of deja vu. I need to make sure that I'm applying some of these things and figuring out how this doesn't overwhelm me to where I feel like I don't have quality of life anymore. So it is, I guess it's a lifelong opportunity to keep thinking about your mind shift, right?
It's a practice. I mean, it's my hope is that, in our work together, and when I work with clients, is that you get tools that you can reapply and reapply and reapply, because I think it is, especially somebody like you who was such a high achiever and did so much in your working life, like the pull to fill that plate again, I'm sure is pretty strong. And I love that you filled it a little bit and you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing? And let's reassess and reevaluate and make some different choices. And I'm really curious because of, I don't know your story of how you got to where you did in your career, but being somebody that's so ambitious and was so successful in your career, and then to reach retirement, it sounds like you really leaned back into that retirement with a lot of ease, but what have you struggled with, mentally in making that shift, or was it a struggle? The way you described it, it doesn't sound like it was much, and maybe it's appearing now.
This might be too, I don't know if this is too personal or not, but I'll share it anyway, because I think it was a huge driver for me. I was a single mom and divorced for 18 years before I met my current husband a few years ago. But I had always told myself, if I meet the right person, I am not going to allow these other factors to get in the way of that. I'm going to embrace it and go with it. And I met the right person, and he's awesome. And it just worked at a perfect time in my life. And so I think in my head, I knew that someday, right, that was my goal, was to really embrace life and do it with someone, that I could enjoy that with. And so when retirement time finally happened, I think I was so ready for that because I'd been working to that. Not that I was looking for someone my whole life, but when it did happen, it was just this perfect storm of finally letting go of everything. And I really didn't look back at all. I didn't look back at all. And the consulting opportunity, they'd love to let this go on forever and turn into something regular. And I've had no problem saying no to that, right? This is temporary. And my real gig is getting back to this amazing, retirement with someone who's awesome. And we're just it just wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to let go at all. And I think that surprised a lot of people.
Yeah. Did it surprise you?
No, it didn't.
No,
it didn't. I knew for a year, I knew for a year I would very easily say no to everything, right? And I wasn't ever going to go look for anything new. This just sort of popped up. But it really didn't surprise me because when people would ask me that question about what am I going to do, I had so many things that I thought about. I thought, I can't wait to read books and play golf and go volunteer at the school and work out every day. And, now one of my greatest joys is getting home in time for sunset and just watching the sun go down. I mean, it's just like one of those, when you ask me what's most important every day, that's one of those things, right? Getting home and enjoying that. It's one of the things that we like doing most. So it doesn't surprise me that it was easy to flip the switch. And I don't think it'll be hard to flip the switch again once this current gig is over.
I love that. I think that you're reminding me that I'm learning to add more relaxation and more play and more joy in my life. And it is, for me, it's a muscle I have to learn to use. And when I do, there's so much there, being such a doer, it has not been easy, but the more I lean into that and the more I push myself to be in the uncomfortable space of not actively doing something, I'm just amazed more and more and more of the peace and the joy and the beauty in just the tiny little moments of the day.
I so agree. I mean, you just taking a moment to just notice things. I have a cousin who had sent me a note one day and she said, I learned so much from my kids. And she had maybe a 3-year-old at the time. And her 3-year-old was laying on the ground on a blanket. They were having a picnic out at the park. And she's just talking to her mom about, Mom, look at all the clouds going by, and just talking about the wonder of this simple little thing that we see every single day, but we don't stop to actually think about it at all, right? It's just there, but we don't pay attention. And it really jolted her back into thinking about things that are important and actually being in the moment and noticing things and appreciating them. And that's one of those examples that also sticks with me for a long time. So now when I'm, out in nature and I'm actually paying attention to all the sounds and sights and things around me, I'm just present. And being present is such a huge thing for me in terms of quality of life and feeling good about things, is that you're actually paying attention. I remember once talking to a coach. We were talking about kids and parenting, and I said something about, well, I didn't know. And the coach said, you should have known. You should have been paying attention. And I felt a little bit off at that. I was like, really? How do you know? He was right? But it took someone actually throwing that at me to say, you are not present, or you would have known. You wouldn't have forgotten, right? And I just think it just, like you said, it's muscle memory sometimes, to try to make sure and remind yourself that being present is such a huge thing.
It's such a huge thing. And you reminded me to go back to the journaling piece, but journaling is something that helps me be present too. I mean, I use it all the time. There's a quote that says something like, take out the mental trash daily. Like it really is like sometimes daily, just emptying what's there so that you can be present, because a lot of times I can get lost in my thinking, and my clients tend to be overthinkers, and we just get so caught up in our head that we're not present to our life. And over the years of working with people, one of the things that has been the biggest discovery is just how much closer we are to everything we want. But the noise in our head and, all the old stories and things that we tell ourselves is just creating the shade that prevents us from experiencing the beautiful life that is so much closer than we realize.
Absolutely. I also kind of once in a while have to remind myself to give myself a pass, things that I might want to do, or, I'm a baker. I love it. Right. And for me to go buy something to take to an event, it just pains me to even think about it. But there are days that you have to go, I can't. I just can't. So guess what? I'm going to go buy. Like sometimes you just give yourself a pass on these simple things and just let it go. And again, it seems like such a simple little thing, but it's important for me to give myself some latitude on occasion for things that I might have done differently, but don't have the time to do today.
Yeah, I love that. I went to a party recently, and I too take great pride in bringing something homemade, and I just didn't have the time or energy to do it. And so I completely get that. And there was a lot less stress and worry by just giving yourself a pass. I love that.
Exactly.
So did we complete the story? Was there anything else inside of your story that you wanted to share?
No, I think this was, it's kind of fun thinking back on how this all came to be. And I'm so thankful that we met that day at the health fair, and that, all these things needed to happen for us to get where we are today. But if you hadn't been at the health fair, and if one of my team members hadn't engaged you and actually done it, and Early Warning didn't give me the opportunity to really offer this to others, I mean, I might not be where I'm at today in terms of, feeling really completed. And so I'm really thankful for all the things that led up to where we are today. So I appreciate all that I still think about you once in a while and quote you often.
I feel that. You're so welcome. And I'm equally grateful. I looked back before we got on, and we realized that we started working together or met in 2017. And watching your journey has been such a joy for me, to talking to you back then when you were anticipating this retirement, and then seeing you here and now and living it, and filled with a lot of peace and a lot of joy. It just gives me a lot of joy. And so I'm so grateful to know you. And I'm so grateful that you were willing to come on and share your story. And yeah. Any final thoughts? Yeah.
Now I am, I'm going to live the dream. How about that?
I love that. I love that. You're creating it every day. So good. Thank you so much for being here and for this conversation.
Thank you, Carla. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.